Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Crane, and I am the Program Director for the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. And you are listening to Global Industry Spotlight, a conversational series focused on providing resources and insight for the creative entrepreneur. We are here to connect with you, network, discuss business, and all things creative entrepreneurship. We are streaming live out of the Comcast Business Startup Studio, a room designed for Chicago's small business community located at 2112. Chicago's first music, film, and tech incubator. We have a new website created with our community of creative entrepreneurs in mind to serve as a resource, a place where you can find jobs, events, workshops, education, and even see our music advisory group, which is super awesome now. And we are also introducing our office hours. So you can check in on Fridays with me, and we can talk about music stuff. You have any questions or things you want to talk about, go to the website and click on office hours. Again, visit cceglobal.org and let us know what you think. Any feedback is very much appreciated. Today, this Global Industry Spotlight is on Nick Heineman, dad to Human Riley and Pitbull Wally, an all-weather e-biker, and has enjoyed playing the guitar, flute, and French horn. Being of service to social justice platforms that support communities has guided Nick's entire career, including creative professional development for young adults who are court-involved or within social services. Nick's first experienced the uniqueness of Chicago's independent music community as a youth attending shows throughout Chicago. As an organizer at an independent bar in Logan Square, he saw an opportunity for shows to provide material support for Chicago's hyper-local nonprofits through organizing community impact concerts. Their modest success and Nick's leadership caught the attention of Social Works, a not-for-profit founded by Chance the Rapper. In late 2017, Nick was appointed Social Works Director of Programs and Project Director, where he developed the Hallmark event, A Night at the Museum at Chicago's Museum of Science and Industry, as well as created national initiatives like My State of Mind. Subsequently, Nick has also served with distinction at Trans Lifeline, the first transgender crisis hotline in the United States and Canada, Movement BE, an initiative empowering Southern California's at-risk youth through creative storytelling, and Mindful Philanthropy, a program that develops direct connections between donors and mental health, addiction recovery, and community well-being initiatives. Nick has also enjoyed working to support music arts education, life skills development, and family professional development throughout Chicago up until joining CIVL in 2022. As executive director, Nick's priority is to maintain CIVL's position as an advocate for Chicago's independent live music and performing arts venues. Nick has enjoyed serving the organization for 1 year as of May 2023. Welcome to our guest.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me today, Daniel. That is a really nice intro there and well read. You're really good at reading.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Phew, I got it.
You're great at that.
So it's taken some time, I have to say. If you ever watch Mr. Rogers talk, his pace of talking is so slow. So you you have to focus in. And I think when I am on this podcast or producing this podcast or even reading things, I always have to tell myself, slow down. Right.
That was what got me, was your pace.
Right. It's all about cadence. Yeah, it's all about the pace. Because I it's easy for me to fly through things.
Yeah.
But you realize you kind of miss it. And it's easier to just kind of catch.
All day.
So that being said, I really am struck by this kind of career of yours, right?
Sure.
Kind of really in focused in community and social justice. And can you just talk a little bit about, your work with at-risk youth and that seems to kind of how it started and then transitioned into Social Works.
Sure.
For a chance.
I once again, thanks for providing a platform for local creatives and organizers to talk about their work within the performing arts community. But to speak to performing arts, it kind of trickles into my entire career, where arts are a form of wellness. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the youth and families I worked with didn't have access to not only financial support, community support, educational support, wellness and health, but just opportunities to feel better by practicing a craft or a hobby or a skill. So my career was kind of led by the inspiration of all the systems and supports I was provided growing up. Marching band, having a dad who would set up a practice space for me and my friend's band in 7th grade,
Mm-hmm.
trying to be the next Blink-182.
Right.
You know, I remembered growing up and finding that every support I needed to be creative was there, and how much better that made me feel just as a human being in general. And I think everyone should be afforded that same feeling of being able to try and fail at something fun like the creative arts. And,
right.
And it's not as accessible as you think it is. So, you know, I myself had my first kid, Riley, when I was young. And with that, I saw an opportunity to start working in fields where other kids could get what I knew I was going to try and give her, was the best access to being successful in whatever she was passionate about, even if that wasn't the arts. I found it important to work with kids who got the short end of the stick to find and realize their dream, because everyone has one.
Right. And so, so you're working, you know, with, I kind of just love this, your take on it too, of, okay, so money aside and music business and all of that, let's talk about what the arts really do for the human spirit.
Yeah.
Right. Let's get to the core of how important, you know, arts and culture are to the health of a society.
Yes.
Talk about your work at Social Works and kind of their mission and what you witnessed, you know, being in that space.
Yeah, certainly. The first experience working with a nonprofit that's led by an artist, of course, a Grammy Award winning artist, but like every artist at one point was independent.
Right.
I saw the same spirit of making sure opportunities were available to everyone through that organization's mission. Social Works is unique because not only is it founded here in Chicago and has a hyper-local focus here in the city neighborhoods, it has the reach of a national brand to bring in support through programs and donors, and really make sure that money gets funneled in an equitable way.
Right.
Social Works set the spirit and the standard, I believe, through the organization's founders' leadership for how to get money into education, right? And to fund arts programs in schools in a way that doesn't just toss money, but understands which schools have shortcomings and barriers. Maybe they haven't procured new textbooks. Maybe they haven't hired new teachers in a while. Maybe they don't have the funding for an arts teacher. That's how the organization would select where impact was had. So I think I really learned how to use data and community-driven leaders who have the testimonials about what does and doesn't work to implore new solutions, whether that's in the form of grants, whether that's in the form of mental health programs. I think Social Works led the way in working with community leaders to leverage their position on how to better the community and support it.
And what kind of data, you know, were you pulling to be able to inform your decisions?
You know, the grant program to the schools, and then dually later in Social Works tenure, there was grants made for the mental health community and mental health providers that were struggling with their budgets to provide mental health support services. That data was always done in collaboration, or was always pulled in collaboration with those community stakeholders. So often in the arts education department at CPS, they know which arts programs are struggling.
Right.
So not reinventing the wheel and trying to understand what data that we could pull out of thin air, but understanding what's out there, and then say at the same time, okay, which one of these schools really has a lot of young artists who just haven't had the opportunity to blossom through programming yet. So I think that taking the anecdotes of what students want and need, and then the data that is available to the arts stakeholders, or in the case of mental health practitioners, you know, how many clients they see versus their budget. Really just understanding the barriers and trying to put ourselves in the shoes of those providers.
And would Social Works develop, I mean, it sounds like you develop specific programs outside of school, but would they help design programs within schools as well?
Yeah, so absolutely. So once you set up a new arts program, whether that's through a granting program at Social Works, or maybe local school districts decide to increase the arts budget, which they always should be. So if you're not increasing your arts budget out there, find a way. But when they do decide to do that, there's a few questions in mind there: the educator, the curriculum, the culture of the class, and also the tangibles, the physical tools needed, whether that's instruments, software, program, computers. You're kind of building a house from scratch. So in the instance of Social Works, they would lean on the subject expertise of the arts educators to understand where the priority of budget should be. Does curriculum need to be purchased? No, because there's someone there who's been an arts teacher in the past and has curriculum, just no funding. Okay, let's get a lot of capital improvement done in this space. So it was just balancing the needs versus understanding what successful arts programs look like.
So talk to us about A Night at the Museum.
Yeah, so A Night at the Museum was a really interesting idea that spawned from holiday giving, right? Holiday giving is that time of year where nonprofits, local leaders, families in need, social services are all scrambling for support. And we realized that a lot of this was happening digitally, right? And this is not a knock to that fundraising, but you were donating online or you're using your credit card. There wasn't much in-person engagement with the philanthropists activated during the holidays. And we were kind of observing that holiday nature of going away from being downtown together or being in your neighborhood, going to small businesses, out as a family, where we said, let's have one night out where we put the cell phones away. We're with each other in a space that's friendly to all ages. And more importantly, we take that space over after hours. So the big challenge with A Night at the Museum was we wanted to do giving and network sharing with local change makers as booths set up through an institutional Chicago museum. So it started at the Field Museum, actually, before we moved to Museum of Science and Industry. And it was a lot of convincing to get a museum to let us in after the doors is closed as a private event that really just looked like and operated like a public event. So we sold the place out. We had 5,000 people in the Field Museum about an hour after they had closed for the day. Everyone who came was able to access the event for free, but they were encouraged to bring donations with them. And we had our donations been centralized to this area, not just clothes, but old Xboxes that have the power cord, iPods, everything under the sun that we could find a partner with local leaders in working with those who are experiencing homelessness or working within the poverty bracket. So I think that A Night at the Museum was just bring people together, provide impact, set up booths throughout the museum for local nonprofits, and have a bunch of giveaways. And it moved to the Museum of Science and Industry in year 2, which saw 10,000 guests come through the building. And it still operates to this day. I'll get people who stop me, who saw me running through A Night at the Museum and just be like, that was one of the greatest events for our family during the holidays.
Right.
So,
yeah. And I think what's incredible about your career is it just speaks about impact. Right? Like you have put together things that have had impact within the communities.
Sure.
And I liked reading in your bio that, okay, I'm going to shows in Logan Square. How can I combine my love for music to also promote for things I care about?
Yes.
Can you just talk about kind of how you saw those two things come together?
Through the power of peers. Like A Night at the Museum was 300 people all doing the same equal amount of effort to accomplish something with throwing a concert, whether that's a fundraising rooted concert at a local club or just throwing a show at one of the venues in Chicago. It takes a lot of work and a whole village of people. I think I feed off the passion of others in those environments.
Right.
I think it's, as an amateur musician, very amateur, when I watch professionals rehearsing, you kind of see that things are accomplished as a unit. And even if you're a solo saxophone player playing a jazz club night, the sound mixer is as much a team member that time, as you are as an individual performer. So to answer your question, it's really been about giving kudos and shout outs to all those who made these things possible. A Night at the Museum was a community effort. The community fundraising concerts in Logan Square were a community effort. So just always like running with the power to the people movement,
Yeah, it's obviously a really common thread. And you seem like you're an incredible community organizer. Like that's what your skills.
Learned from other people who knew better than I.
Yeah, but just being able to execute those events, have impact. I think it takes a lot of work, right? We can all talk about ideas. We can all say, hey, this sounds great. We should do this. This is, these big things up here. But I always have a lot of respect for people who are, executing, events. And putting together things that will have impact or
from scratch.
From scratch, right? Yeah.
That's what makes me the most nervous. That's anyone who does it, whether you're throwing a festival for the show. Yeah. It's that first time nerves.
You don't have you don't have a blueprint.
Don't have a blueprint, and you've got to just trust in yourself.
Right.
And that's where that peership comes from, is watching others with that confidence and bravery.
Right.
And being like, let's try and model what I know they're doing, which is being vulnerable too.
Yeah. That's a great point. So you've been at CIVL now for a year.
Yes. Yeah, the Chicago Independent Venue League. Literally May was a year, and it took that catching up of someone I work with to be like, how long have you been working here now?
Right.
And be like, oh, I think it has been a year.
Yeah.
So the Chicago Independent Venue League was founded in 2017. I joined in 2022. Now, in that operating time prior to me joining, in its mission to advocate on behalf of independent performing arts venues in Chicago, the stakeholders of those independently owned venues are the owners.
Right.
So what's really neat about coming into it and being here a year later is still knowing that a lot of the success we've had and the collaborations I get to enjoy were spirited, founded, and powered by venue owners coming together to be peers for the first time. As they used
how did that work out?
yeah. The saying,
quite some personalities here in Chicago.
Absolutely, there are. I think it takes a strong and outgoing personality to want to open and run and operate a performing arts venue. It happened through, the new slogan, which today is the venue owners say, we're not competitors, we're in competition with each other. Prior to CIVL's forming, you may have heard a little bit more of, I rock with them, I respect them, but we compete with each other, just like a restaurant or a bar or a retail shop might. But it all came out of the need for the spirit of community. And it's funny how things work out sometimes where there are no future thoughts of, I'm going to form a cohort of people that I don't normally ever talk to. That has to be spirited or kind of injected by some sort of passion and need to form a coalition. And that's what CIVL represents, is the idea that small business owners in Chicago, especially our venue owners who have operated venues for 30, 40 years, some of them, are fighting every day to maintain the culture of their neighborhood. So suppressing gentrification. And in that style, CIVL was formed. So in 2017, Sterling Bay, a major developer globally, announced the for sure plans through the city of Chicago's approval of Lincoln Yards. For the listener that doesn't know what Lincoln Yards is, it's basically a mega development coming to the city of Chicago in the form of retail, entertainment, industry,
a soccer stadium at one point.
A soccer stadium potentially at one point that got scrapped. We're gonna have a soccer stadium. We won't have a soccer stadium. That's how big this place is. That they can kind of try to piece together. Of course, there will be condo living. So if you know Chicago, we're a very neighborhood-based city. The culture and the spirit of who we are as Chicagoans is often rooted in our local neighborhoods. Whether that's Roseland or whether that's all the way up to Logan Square or up to Rogers Park. What you see is this mega development kind of looks like a brand new neighborhood, but in the form of a turnkey shopping district, right? Within those plans, Sterling Bay also announced that Live Nation would be building a mega venue within that space. And by mega, we kind of amount that to the cap size of the venue, meaning how many people could attend a single concert. And that was getting into the plans of 3,000 or 4,000 seats. The location of this planned mega venue was right in the vicinity of not just directly in the vicinity of independent venues, small independent venues in Chicago, but close enough to the outskirts of dozens of others where this would immediately impact their ability to compete, but also throw successful shows that keep staff members employed, the sound engineers mixing, the lighting designers doing what they do. Sterling Bay announces this. A few owners are angry enough where they say, I'm going to call Joe Shanahan of the Metro. I'm going to call Katie Tutton of the Hideout. I'm going to call Billy Hellcamp of Sleeping Village. People who I know are stakeholders in this moment and would like to advocate against this venue being built at all.
Right.
And that's CIVL's founding. Is a dozen or so venue owners coming together and working with local legislators and local community leaders to eventually and successfully get Sterling Bay, the largest developer in the world, to cancel their plans to build this venue.
Yeah.
So that was from 2017 through the pandemic. It started with protecting the equity of a neighborhood, and then moving into saving the neighborhoods through the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that whole whole thing that happened with Lincoln Yards. One, just because as a professional musician that played in those clubs since I was 18,
right?
I knew how important, like you said, you made a great point, right? Chicago's a neighborhood city. Your neighborhood bar, your neighborhood music venue, your coffee shop. That that defines a lot of your space.
Yes.
And if we don't honor those spaces, and I think that you've seen this a lot on the South Side and the West Side, where there's not clubs that have been able to stay open. There's not spaces that have been able to thrive.
Yes.
They've been shut down. They've been closed, right? And what ends up happening is that the neighborhood, loses culture and it doesn't do well, right?
Yes.
There's a certain type of person or a certain type of people that don't do well. And I think the flip side of that as well is, if you're not going to honor, what has made Chicago, then what is Chicago, right?
Sure.
Is we just an open land for, new developments and new retail all the time? Are we going to try to hold on to some of the things that we hold sacred? Like, I was really excited that the warehouse got historic status.
Yes.
So we have to hold on to those things. And it was really inspiring to me. I mean, shout out to Gomez. I met Gomez when I was 18. And he's been holding it down and holding down heavy culture in Wicker Park for such a long time.
Sure.
Both at Subterranean and at B Kitchen. And I loved the idea that these venue owners were getting together, right? This is unprecedented.
Yes.
That they're all getting together to be like, no, we don't want this development. This does not help, our bottom line. And then COVID hits, right?
For sure.
And now, luckily, they're already organized, and they can advocate for relief, pretty much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you brought up a great point, Daniel. Like, the ability to protect your venue space, neighborhood by neighborhood, is not the same story.
Right.
The access to loans, the access to your alderman, the access to local policies that restrict your right to get a public place of amusement license,
right.
Which is needed to put on ticketed shows in Chicago. So I think that in that Sterling Bay moment, there was also an awakening and a realization of the venue owners that there is a space of performing arts in the city of Chicago that is thriving in people, spirit, and talent, and doesn't have access to the same resources that you do as venue owners in the north side of Chicago. And that was something that, shout out to the leadership of our founders, was realized when the pandemic hit, right? Was the inequities that existed in access to emergency relief funds or loans or financial support and aid. I think in the wake of the pandemic, we know the venues were the first to close and the last to open. And within that realization, which became a quick one for these venue owners, it was full to the wall, get money from the government to sustain and relieve ourselves. I think what's really amazing about people like Gomez, the owner of Subterranean, Beat Kitchen, and other ventures, and Jim Lita Tillman, the owner of the Harold Washington Cultural Center, is that they knew how to organize with their local aldermen. They had been doing this for years, and were peers with local legislators. And then you have Senator Tammy Duckworth coming in a major way for the performing arts community to make sure that what became the saving grace of our live event industry here in Chicago, which was the shuttered funds, venue funds that came from the federal relief program. That was $500 million that was sent to not just venues, the museums, anything that was tourist based or entertainment based received that money. So I think that we saw the power of advocacy when venue owners who have been doing this for decades also say, hey, I know venues in our South and West sides that should be able to apply to this program and be just as aware of it as I am. So when that money became available to venues to apply for relief funds during the pandemic, it was about making sure everybody, as many people were aware of that program as possible. Another testament to the founders of CIVL. Because it didn't stop there. They go, okay, the venues, we got the win for the venues. Right. Let's think about all of our staff who are out of work, which was always top of mind. Right. But it was about organizing fundraising for that moment. So the CIVL Save Fund was the other big highlight of our work during the pandemic. Individual donors from $5 to $100 to $1,000 raised funds for the living expenses for staff out of work. So those who weren't able to pay their rent, pay their bills, CIVL raised well over six figures to distribute to scholarships to staff all over the city. Right. So I think there's always just been a holistic care model in the community since CIVL's founding. Like, hey, we have access to some programs that others don't. Hey, we got to make sure people know about the grant programs we're aware of. And also our staff are the lifeblood of what we do. let's make sure we can do our best to support them, which still wasn't everything. Staff are still hurting.
Yeah,
that's a whole other conversation about their
absolutely.
wellness, their health,
Right.
their equity of pay, their opportunity, and access to different groups of people, to not the security jobs or the bartending jobs, but being the production manager, running the lights program. I think that all of these lessons were important, but kind of in concert with the pandemic.
Yeah. And so you started in a really interesting time.
Yes.
Where we're kind of coming out of the pandemic.
Right.
And so right, for this last year, what has been the focus for CIVL? What are some of the issues that you're addressing as a collective? And what are some of the opportunity spaces that you see here in the city?
Yeah. So coming when CIVL was at a point to start hiring staff, for the very simple reason the venue owners were volunteering all of their time to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And now that, like you said, the venues are operating again, it's back to business.
Right.
Booking artists, finding new artists, finding a national touring artist and saying, we want you at our venue. Here's why you should come to our 1,000-cap venue instead of the one. Like, just business as usual.
Yeah.
In a very spirited and fun and friendly way. But I came in at a time where CIVL was redefining not its mission, but its direction under its mission, because it came from a very save and suture type place. We've got to survive. We've got to make sure people are as happy and healthy as they can be. And now that we're back to booking and restrict, back to business had the ups and downs of the different variants, and the lifting and re-implementing of COVID restrictions. And our venue owners are very much on the side of supporting our Chicago Department of Public Health and the mandates they push forward. So we were there without a gruff to support so that was like the first year after the pandemic where we were allowed to throw events again and have people in our spaces. That was a year of trial and tribulation of adhering to the policies, just being prepared. Oh, we didn't have masks because we thought masks were over. Let's get some masks, and finding ways to get those donated so it wasn't an expense to the venues. When I joined, we were just coming out of the phase of kind of that collective, oh, things are really back to normal, and what programs do we implement and operate? So CIVL's in a point right now, we are a 501c6, right? That means we are a civically engaged nonprofit organization that not only advocates, but rallies the community together that may not know we exist. So our first priority as we were open again was to find out which independent venues were out there that could benefit from our support community that weren't a part of it yet. That's boundless. There are hundreds.
There's a lot of venues.
And how do you define an independent venue? At the Chicago Independent Venue League, we define it as a brick and mortar space that's independently owned or leased or rented that throws ticketed events. Those tickets can be free all the time or they can be charged. So that's the landscape. Does a bar that books out some awesome bands wherever they might be in the city that has a cover charge, regularly scheduling artists, is that an independent venue? In our eyes, it is, because to us, we're not here to put green stamps of certification to say you are independent. That is not our mission. Our mission is to say you're independently owned. Okay, let's get you our free Narcan training. Let's get you access to professional development that would usually cost your business money that CIVL's here to provide for free. So now it's about a bit of sustainability mode where we're there to help build out the operational support around businesses, whether that's training for sexual harassment or updating your codes of conduct and your ethics policies, or it's we don't have a regular electrician. Someone at another venue has someone great that won't overcharge you. It can be as little as that or human resources based. And that's what we pride ourselves in for the years since I've been here, is being there as a direct support and ally to the business owner that says, I'm not doing as I'm not working as strongly in this area because I'm so busy booking shows. Can you help?
And do you get the sense from the venue owners that people are coming back? I mean, are shows, are people coming back? Are people coming back to watch shows? Are staff coming back? I know that has been a big issue. I've heard that, bigger shows like sell out, like festivals and stuff like that, I think are doing pretty well. But some of these smaller or mid-tier venues are having, some issues of selling tickets. And also I've heard that people aren't drinking as much.
Sure.
Right. So that was a big It's a big moneymaker for bars, obviously.
Right.
And if people aren't drinking as much, that culture has kind of shifted a little bit.
Sure. These are three. I'm really appreciative of these questions and points because it's tiered in three sections. You said, are people coming back?
Yeah.
How are the venues doing dependent on if they're larger or smaller, right. And the bar notion of maybe more of this California diet where you don't consume alcohol, you consume right. cannabis, or maybe you're sober and healthy living right. and you like mocktails. I'm going to start with the one that I agree with. And all of my views on this are based in, I only have my perspective.
Yeah, of course.
But I've been on my electric bike, as you mentioned right. in my intro, for a year now, visiting different venues 3 to 5 times a week.
Yeah.
And what I'm going in there to do is not to be like, hi, Nick, CIVL,
right.
what's your email? Let's partner.
Yeah,
like, these are I'm there to enjoy the show, talk to the staff, right. observe,
check out the scene,
and see what Tuesday looks like versus Friday. Let's compare a Tuesday and a Friday that both have small artists. Let's compare a Tuesday and a Friday that both are national bands coming through on tour. So are people coming back? They most definitely are.
Awesome.
That I can say with whether it's 100 Cap Club over at Shuba's or the Vic Theater.
Mm-hmm.
The talent buyers are really keyed into the industry, whether that's local artists just starting or maybe on their upward projection mm-hmm. or someone established. What they never lost was their skill set and their science to right. bring in artists.
And data's got even better. I mean, with tools like Chartmetric and stuff like that, right. you can really see how an artist is doing yes. in a region.
And back to your point about the bar, that is true. We are seeing an increase in the mocktail menu versus mm-hmm. the alcoholic menu. People are still drinking in both sides of the aisle, the non-alcoholic and the alcoholic beverages. We are noticing post-pandemic an increase in sales across venues pretty consistently mm-hmm. in non-alcoholic beverages. So if non-alcoholic providers or mocktail industry people are interested, the bars are exploring the idea of that.
And they're still expensive drinks.
And they're still expensive drinks.
They're not like cheaper
The profit
drinks.
Margin's still good because
right.
you're using fresh ingredients oftentimes. So that's an interesting pickup that you saw was brought up in one of our board meetings. Hey, is anyone else seeing their mocktail menu increase?
Right.
I am. So I think that just speaks to always evolving the business revenue strategies, whether it's bar, food, entertainment, vendor services. But let's talk about the success of whether big bands, small bands, local, national. Again, I think I've maybe there's 365 calendar days, probably done roughly 200 venue visits across multiple venues, the same sometimes, or some just one off. What I've noticed is that the local artists that have a grassroots following that book Shuba's on a Tuesday or Sleeping Village on a Wednesday, a lot of people are showing up. Mm-hmm. Their friends their friends missed them, right? They missed their other friends who they used to see at shows. The artists who are also in a band that might not be booking shows are there to support their peers.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that be more successful than not the touring artists, but the touring artist that comes through that may not have a Chicago connection.
Right.
They may have hella impact on their socials, their YouTube views. But if they're not connected to the root genres of Chicago, which are many, or also a network of listeners, you see those shows might miss sometimes. But I am noticing a lot of success in our small to mid-sized clubs booking local Chicago artists
events
who who I know, and you go there and you're like, oh, there's Daniel. And it may not be 1,000 people that fit in there, but all 200 that could fit in there made their way and bought a ticket to that event. We're also seeing our 1,000 cap clubs, the Metro, 500 and higher, Patio Theater, Avondale Music Hall, Lincoln Hall. They're being very calculated with their bookings. So when you show up for their Friday show, you still see that line around the block. I see artists currying favor with our venues, being like, we haven't played a small club in a while. Let's, after the pandemic, maybe play the big show at the United Center, but go do a surprise set at a 200 cap room because we miss that feeling of intimacy.
Well, and I think it's great to hear that. I mean, I'm happy that, people are coming back and that you feel like the local scene is supported by the local people. And obviously, because you've been going to shows, you've been checking the scene out, you're the person that would be able to give, just an accurate description of what you witness, right?
Sure.
What your perspective is. So
can I be fair to your question actually real quick? So we represent performing arts venues. That includes theaters. That includes comedy clubs.
Right.
And I will absolutely attest to that. The theater communities really searching for ways to bring their audiences back post-pandemic.
Theater's struggling a little bit.
Theaters are struggling. The age difference, for sure. And most importantly, a lot of the audience that engaged theaters prior to may have financial setbacks, where a theater model has you buying subscriptions, or maybe the ticket price was heavier in the past. So theater owners are looking for solutions to bring the audiences back, comedy clubs to bring the audiences back. And to be fair to the music industry, there are months, where it's like, hey, did anyone see a decrease in ticket sales this month? And people are raising their hands in agreement. So what's great about CIVL, we meet regularly to share industry knowledge that isn't publicly available, but that's to help understand how other people are doing. So to be fair to your question, there are months and moments since the pandemic where it's like, before the pandemic, I was hot this week compared to 2019, and now I'm not. So you are still seeing that.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone is having to evolve and develop new strategies and find new partnerships and figure out how to make the business sustainable.
Yes.
I mean, as it is, any kind of business and entertainment and hospitality, the margins are usually pretty tight.
Yeah.
And if you don't own the property, if you don't, which is a big thing, it can be hard to sustain.
Yeah.
And it just comes from my own experience at booking Underground Wonder Bar and doing doing some other playing in bars for a long time. All those bars,
and hustling your own marketing.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, and that's, but I'm happy to hear that CIVL exists, and that first of all, why it started is incredible, and that people have this platform to be able to share best practices. What are some things that we can improve on? I need help with this, I need help with that. I mean, all that stuff is just really improves the music ecosystem in general, right? If there's more conversations, and like you said, like, we're competitive, but we're in competition with each other, but we're not competitive, right? Like, we're all trying to get people into our doors. But there are some things, like, I mean, I love the simple idea of, I have a great electrician. I mean, who can come in and knows how to work sound systems, or, is trustworthy. So even that in itself can save someone a couple $100. What's next for CIVL? In this next year, what are some hopes from your end?
Yeah. So our strategy moving forward, now that we kind of gotten our base of growing our member venues, and understanding what existing services we have to immediately be supportive, rather than spending all year ideating new programs, we did that, but we also made sure that everything available to us to help support the business. And to your point about them being in competition, like, if one venue is doing well, the other is going to do well. No one's going to attend the same exact venue every day, every week. So you want performing arts in general to do well, because people are engaging the environment, the culture, the industry, and making ticket buying a regular part of their weekend plans. Our next step is to promote how important that is to community. We remember and now know again what it's like to be next to your friend, swaying and moving, or maybe in the mosh pit, getting picked up safely and crowd surfing, whatever that style might be. That's a form of self-improvement and removal from the stressors of life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that, while we search for the best ticketing platforms that don't charge our venues an arm and a leg, or finding ways to understand the trends of ticket buyers a little more intimately through data, is of top priority. But at the same time, our future is about instilling the importance of going out to live entertainment together.
Right.
And it takes a little bit of pushing back to it. And maybe you were never a show person or a concert person before the pandemic, and you're trying to find a way to reconnect with people again. There's nothing like going to a show with your friends or by yourself. It's a great place to meet people. So sharing with the community that we're here and we're present, not those that are coming to our shows regularly, but new audience development is a big part of our future. But most importantly, the equity of our space and our industry. So moving forward, understanding what venue ownership looks like, not only through racial groups, but also through age groups. It's a multi-generational space, performing arts, right? And the business ownership side of that isn't as multi-generational as it could be. We see young people operating performing arts spaces, but in the form of DIY venues, right?
Yeah.
And venue owners are supportive of DIY spaces, but they would like to see them operate in a legitimate way so that they can be peers to them and support them, rather than knowing they have to operate in the shadow as a young person just trying to provide a great space, right? So another part of our moving forward strategy is exciting the next generation about owning and operating performing arts spaces. If you think about it, how many young kids are out there forming their business plan to run 1,000-cap venue and instilling the importance of independent ownership and not moving towards a model where conglomerates are eating up the independent venue industry as the next generation seek out what they're passionate to lead, and I think there is so much to be spoken about, not only in social justice, but community organizing within the performing arts community. So it's a really special place to operate a business. You can give platforms to others who can utilize that space to increase their mission impact.
I love the idea of supporting DIY, spaces by encouraging them to, maybe come up with a business plan and become legit.
Yeah.
When I was coming up in the city, Q4 was a space that we all went to off of North Avenue. Obviously does not exist anymore, but it was such a beautiful moment in time.
Yep.
Where, it was underground. It was all these artists.
So cool.
It was like, it was such a scene, and everyone was creating new music. It was innovative. People were taking risks, trying different things. It was like slam poetry. I mean, it was just, the whole thing was awesome.
Yes.
And then one day it's gone.
Yep.
Right. They moved to a new space, and I mean, it changed a little bit. But I think to figure out a way how to bring those things out of the shadows and support those communities. I mean, a lot of those people that came out of that space, you see, are like the main booking people, or are the main DJs playing now.
Totally.
I mean, there's a lot of kind of it's almost like the school of DIY.
Yeah.
Where,
which you have to school yourself because you're doing it all by yourself.
And when you're a young person, and you don't have a lot of money, a venue maybe is, I don't have $30 to go into a show and spend for drinks and stuff like that.
Yes.
I just want to grab a 6-pack out of this DIY space and check out, my friends. And that intimate setting can be, a great way to meet people.
Yes.
Well, it's wonderful, to meet you and learn about your work. And I also just want to, shout out to, serve distinction with the Trans Lifeline, the first transgender crisis hotline in United States and Canada. Empowering Southern California's at-risk youth. There's this really connection between mental health and arts. It seems and sounds like, you've really been able to have a lot of impact, and you care about these things, right? These are important, issues and things for you. How do you deal, with fear or doubt when you're developing these new programs, or you're, stepping into CIVL, which is a lot of characters, a lot of, strong personalities, and moving in these spaces?
Yeah. We spoke on it a little bit earlier, but it's looking up to peers and learning from others.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen you many times take that moment of fear and running a complete room of people and turning it into an opportunity to share what you love and what you care about. And It's not a moment of performance. It's a moment of authentic, just being yourself. Yeah. Right. And I've struggled with that in philanthropy throughout the years, truly being myself. I think that you're trying to appease donors. You're trying to appease your base. You're trying to move throughout moments, meetings, and people that all have different intentions. And what I've learned is that being my authentic self actually increases my ability to be successful in philanthropy. So dealing with fears and doubts is about having confidence that if you're trying something new from a place where it's in your heart as something good, you just go.
Yeah.
And you let everything else. It's a classic tale of building the plane while you fly it. And don't be afraid to fall. And every solution is like a benefit to you, right? Every learning moment's a benefit to you. Right now, we're operating in that space, somewhat of an exclusive here. In the past year, the Chicago Independent Venue League commissioned a new organization being formed.
Mm-hmm.
We are really proud to announce that we have a 501c3 nonprofit that will be launching this summer. It's a brand new space within the same community, but instead of supporting the venue owners, this will support the independent venue staff, the independent artists looking for resources and support to excel their career, and the ticket holders and the safety within the spaces they consume. Without talking about our really awesome nonprofit called the Chicago Music Scene, which drops this summer. For a long time, it's been a lot of like hesitancy, fear, making sure we're really listening to our constituency to design the programs behind this new nonprofit, which will be mental wellness, access and equity and professional development, and safety, right, and well-being. So I think that throughout the past year, as we recruited a board of directors, we designed programs, we're preparing for this launch. That fear is in us every day, and it's confidence of my peers and people I work with, to know that I did right by them and we did right by each other. And then we go, you know, just like a new song.
And then we go.
Yeah, exactly. You write a new song, you perform it live.
Right.
You're a comedian, you got a new act, you got
and once you perform it, you adjust it.
Right.
And you know, it definitely, you know, takes on its own life. So to end, give us a suggestion of a book or a podcast or something that you know, inspires you personally or professionally.
Gosh, and I was not at all prepared for this one because there's so much to go to for that. I've been big on the podcasts.
Okay.
I do a lot of road tripping and driving and bouncing around to the venues. And I appreciate what it takes to do long form conversation. So it's a challenge. So I learned from people's communication techniques and podcasts. I would say one that's inspiring me lately, my gosh, is Whiskey Ginger with Andrew Santino.
Okay.
Now, this is a comedy podcast, right? My inspiration has to come from the lighthearted moments in life.
Right.
I search out podcasts to laugh, to be at ease, and not to be educated. Maybe that'll change one day. But Andrew Santino is a local Chicago comedian, right? So when you hear anecdotes about our venues often in his podcast, it's really cool to just understand how important, how lucky I am to be working in this history. So if you're looking to unwind, Whiskey Ginger, Andrew Santino, Chicago stand-up comedian. Last time I saw Andrew Santino was at Beat Kitchen, Gomez's spot.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
At a height of his career, right before the pandemic. And he was still playing the Beat Kitchen, 100, 200 cap venues. So go check that out if you just need to laugh and forget for a second.
Well, I love that. Well, Nick, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. I think CIVL is in great hands. I'm excited about this new organization as well as you guys launch this summer. Nick is also a part of our music advisory board that CCE launched this year. We'll be putting forth about 1 to 2 initiatives, probably an event of some sort, to also improve, you know, access, professional development for artists, and see how we can, you know, overall improve the music ecosystem here in Chicago. So again, my name is Daniel Crane. I'm the program director for the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. And this was another episode of Global Industry Spotlight, a conversational series focused on providing resources and insight for the creative entrepreneur. We are streaming out of the Comcast Business Startup Studio located at 2112, Chicago's first music, film, and tech incubator. Thank you to Comcast Business and Shore for providing the tools necessary to make our programming possible. Visit cceglobal.org to register for free workshops offered by our partners. Find us on Instagram and Facebook. And tune in next week for another Global Industry Spotlight. Wishing you all a wonderful end to your week and a great Memorial Day weekend. We will speak with you soon. Take care.
Be well, everyone.